I'm Ash Pemberton, and this is CNX Podcast, the Chiang Mai community podcast where local businesses, brands, and interesting people get heard.
Where do nomads work? The majority of them do actually work at home. There's a version of life in Thailand that looks like if you live in Manhattan. Most people don't think about that. I've spent time in 42 countries or so. Chiang Mai is a perfect size, small city. The best quality of life in the world. It's extremely safe. Everyone is extra friendly. Stay in a base for 1 to 3 months. And then if we want to see somewhere new, we'll do a 4 or 5 nights vacation. Everywhere that we stay, we like to stay all the way in the center of the universe. And that usually comes at a massive premium. What if there was a blog that you could just drop into the existing site? And then we finally coded it out. And then we just started using it for our own customers. The goal is always to continue to create something that people actually get value from, hopefully tons of value, so that the amount that they're spending with you is nothing compared to the value that they're receiving.
Yo, hello everyone, welcome back, and a massive welcome to Mr. Jesse Schoberg.
Hey guys, what's up?
Can I give you a little introduction? You to me are like an ambassador for living your best life in Thailand. I know that's both in Bangkok and in Chiang Mai. You live a pretty luxurious and high-serviced life. And I love that. I admire that. And I enjoy that myself. So we've definitely got that in common. For me, you're like a next generation of digital nomad. You truly work remotely, being location-independent business owner.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And of course, we're both members of the DC. I've talked about that on previous podcasts. That's the Dynamite Circle, which is an entrepreneurs network and just a great way to meet good people. You are the CEO and the co-founder of Dropinblog. That is the fastest and easiest way to add a blog to your website, to any website, and a true alternative to WordPress. But there's 2 other things as well. When I think of you, I actually think of your wedding. Thank you for inviting me and my family to your amazing, beautiful wedding, which was on the beachfront hotel in Phuket. And I have 3 memories of that just stick with me.
All right.
Number 1 is you and your swagger when you walk down the aisle. You dance down the aisle. It was the look on your face. It was good moves, good bit of swagger in your step. And I absolutely loved that. Number 2 was Janine. You're a beautiful bride. And she cut her long flowing white gown. She got the scissors out and literally cut it into a mini dress. Which
you got to know when the party starts, right?
I thought that was just super cool. And she had 2 dresses for the price of 1.
That's right.
Yeah, it was an awesome little touch. I thought that was a really beautiful thing and very memorable for me. And 3rd was your dad.
All right.
He's a dude. And when he started jamming on the harmonica at your wedding, I could just see that was just like a really beautiful family moment. And I was there with my family and I had a good chat with him and just really enjoyed his music too. And then finally, you will always be remembered by me for being the person that introduced me to credit card roulette.
Oh.
So I don't know if you knew you were the person that introduced that to me.
No, but
yeah.
I'm glad that I've infected you.
Yeah, so maybe we can chat through all of these things that I would choose as your intro.
Well, one thing that's interesting is you brought up about the being a digital nomad. It's about having a location-independent business, but it also means utilizing that. So the difference between just having a location-independent business, but then actually leaning into that and living around the world and living remotely is what makes that differentiation. You're not really a nomad if you just live in one place, right? It's an art to get that done correctly. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of versions of that, and I've lived a few different versions of that. It's an exciting way to live, not without its challenges, and it's just a different set of challenges and a different set of experiences.
Sure. Being nomadic allows you to live wherever you want. Where do you choose to live?
I would say that Thailand is definitely my favorite place to live. I've spent time in, I think, 42 countries or so, but the last maybe 6 or 8 years, I've been more based in Asia. Once I discovered and got to know the culture and some of the language and the community and lifestyle in Thailand, it became my favorite place.
Yeah, sure. I think we both share that passion for Thailand. And people ask me all the time, oh, how long have you been in Thailand and do you still love it? For me, I just say, well, it's unbeatable. I can't actually get better than what I have here. But we have different setups. I am very much rooted in Chiang Mai because of my family. You have the choice to go everywhere and anywhere, and I see your schedule, and I consider 1 month away definitely living in a different place. And you tend to do 1 month trips.
I like to do ideally 1 to 3 months is the perfect window usually. If you do less than a month, then you don't really have time to have a routine. Then you're kind of on vacation. Obviously, part of the beauty of living around the world is that you get to see stuff, right? You want to go to different tourist things. You want to experience the culture and the food. So you are doing a bit of touristing, but if you're there for 2.5 weeks, you don't really have time to have a normal life. You're just touristing on vacation. So the sweet spot that we've been doing the last couple of years is we stay in a base for 1 to 3 months. And then if we want to see somewhere new, we'll do a 4 or 5 nights vacation. We found that's a really cool amount of time. We can just tourist and we can unplug from the work. We can make it a long weekend and not feel bad that we're not getting into routine. And then it's interesting. You can do as much touristy stuff in 5 days of doing that full time than you would if you were there for a month living as a nomad and living and working and having a routine. That's really exciting, but also it's a cool way for the 5-day thing to be like, oh, okay, I could spend time here. This is a spot that I think is interesting that I could spend a few months in, versus if you go somewhere for 5 days and you're like, oh, that was fun as a tourist, but I don't really need to spend 3 months here next year or something like that. So that's kind of was a cool way to test the waters. 1 to 3 months is the ideal because then you can rent stuff long term. I generally live on Airbnb. In Asia here, I'll do serviced apartments, which can be done month to month, which are amazing. But in most of the world, you got to be living in Airbnb. And there's a substantial price decrease once you hit a month. Otherwise, you're on the tourist pricing. You still are paying a premium over having a lease, but the 1 month is where you hit the breaking point of having like, quote, better deal. And then that gives you time to set up your your gym routine set up, get your food routine set up, whatever those things are, and really dig into a place and get to know it and live like a normal people instead of just being a tourist.
And presumably you did this 4-day recce to Chiang Mai a while ago because you've repeatedly come back to Chiang Mai. Is that right?
When I was living in Latin America, I kind of was living as an expat instead of a nomad. The expat is more like what you're living as far as having the base with the house and more normal setup. And I had that when I lived in Panama. So a lot of people go in reverse. They start working online, they start nomading around, and then they find somewhere they like, and then they settle down. I did the opposite. I moved to Panama from the States, just straight in, bought an apartment, moved in, set up a normal expat life. And then I started meeting some nomad people, and I learned about how the other version of this life could work. So around 2015 or 16, when I was getting done with the Latin America chapter, I had learned that Chiang Mai was a digital nomad hub. And so I wanted to go to ground zero and see what was going on. And so I actually moved here for a year around 2016. Since then, I come back usually during November, post the DCPKK conference with the Dynamite Circle, as you'd mentioned. Many people come up here, as well as it's the perfect time of year. And then I like to have Thanksgiving up here and then go to Yiping Festival as well in November. It's always really nice. So I'm usually here for November, sometimes more, depending on the year. But
sure. Why Thanksgiving in Chiang Mai? Is there something special about that, or is that just something for you?
To throw a shameless plug, actually, it's not shameless. It's just a thing that I like. I like getting Thanksgiving at the Dukes. It's just amazing. I always joke that that was the thing that could pull me back to the States. With the Dukes, you don't have to miss Thanksgiving anymore. It's all actually probably better quality because since they don't have all the access to all the pre-made stuff, it's all from scratch. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, I've actually had one of their. They sell the Thanksgiving turkey meal in a box.
Oh,
it's
wow.
delivered in a box.
Oh, like all ready to eat.
All ready to eat. And I know that's good. And in fact, nicely for me to ask you, what is it about Chiang Mai that you love the most? What does it do for you?
It's the perfect size, small city. It's the best quality of life in the world. It's extremely safe. It has amazing selection of food. It has great access to goods. Everyone is extra friendly, and it's just easy to get around. It's a city that's very manageable. It's not this size where you're constantly dealing with traffic problems. There's enough people that have found this place special, which means that there's enough good restaurants, which to me is important. There's like a really quality version, at least one, usually more, of every type of food that you could want. So a lot of times when you go to smaller towns, that's something that you lose out on. Maybe they don't really have great ramen, or maybe they don't really have great Korean barbecue or tacos, whatever. Here in Chiang Mai, I guess magically because it is this magnet for people that like living here, it's also a lot of those people show up and open a restaurant. You just have all the logistical things that make Thailand good, and everything that Bangkok has, you can get here, right? It's pretty interesting to see that combination of things happening. Chiang Mai is a special place.
And you said the small city. Does that pack enough punch for you? Because before I had kids, Chiang Mai just didn't quite do it for me. There wasn't enough.
It's definitely not for me. I can spend time here. I like spending a weekend or a month here. I'm just a major city person. So I prefer to live in Bangkok, Mexico City, New York, like major metropolitan areas. Both me and my wife really thrive on the access to kind of unique, interesting people that are doing a huge variety of things, as well as just the endless list of activities, restaurants, culture, whatever that comes with a major metropolitan city that you just logistically can't have in a small city. And obviously, that comes with the troubles of larger cities. There's some logistical problems that make them a little bit less desirable than living in smaller cities, but the larger metros are more my personal go-to.
Totally with you. Yeah. People that are listening to this know about digital nomads and maybe have a bit of a preconception. But like I said in your introduction, you're kind of like a high-performing digital nomad. And that's not just me making that up. That was a piece of PR that I read from CNBC that featured you. It definitely went viral, didn't it?
It did have its moment internationally and went really hard in Thai media as well.
One thing that made you different in that article to other digital nomads is you actually put some numbers on things. Can I repeat the numbers?
Go for it.
Well, it's public domain, right?
It is.
I thought you went in at 230K a year. That's American US dollars, which to everyone in Thailand is about 8 million baht. And that you're spending, this is a bit I like, you're living on and you're spending 8K a month, which is US dollars. So that's 280,000 baht a month living in Bangkok.
Yes, correct.
Nice life.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of interesting feedback on those numbers. And people, especially in the digital nomad community, their leading selling point about Thailand is that it's cheap. It can be very cheap. Obviously, the value here is almost unmatched in the world. But the thing is, I would always argue that, well, that also scales. Once I make enough money, go back to the life that I had somewhere else. There are higher quality of life here. It's not just about baselining. And so that was the take of the piece was like, hey, look, there's a version of life in Thailand that looks like if you live in Manhattan. Most people don't think about that. There's a million YouTube videos on how you can live in Chiang Mai for $200 a month or something. And this was the opposite of that. What if you wanted your $30,000 a month life that you would live in lower Manhattan? What would that look like in Bangkok? So it's still a good value, but I also like to live a life that aligns with level that I've finally reached by working online for 20 years.
And just for people at home, we're not talking about like absolute extravagance. We're just talking about a nice Bangkok condo in somewhere like Tonglaw. We're talking about eating out 2-3 times a day in nice restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much eating out all the time, not necessarily out in restaurants. I'd say we eat Thai food probably like half the time. You know, you can just have whatever you want and eat healthy and quality and go out for nice cocktails on a rooftop somewhere and enjoy that. And Bangkok's a city that really offers that in a good way.
Yeah. So let's just stay on that subject of the CNBC article that they wrote about you. How did that come about? Did you instigate it?
Yeah, we were actually doing some outreach for PR for the company. In that year, we actually got pieces in Forbes, Entrepreneurial, a bunch of tier 1 media. Actually, the original thought process was with our company, we're kind of like the first in the space. And so we're trying to like build a moat with the product. And so when competitors come in, that will clearly be the original and the market leader. So this sounds like a roundabout way of getting a piece talking about my lifestyle in Bangkok. That's the pitch that's interesting, not my internet company, right? No one wants to hear about that. So it's more of like a roundabout way of getting press for the company. And then when you would Google our company, the company and me as one of the founders has press in all these top tier places. This must be something important. This must be the true leader in the category, et cetera.
Sure. So everyone seems to have picked up on the fact it was all about you. Like you said, did it serve your business?
Oh, definitely. Obviously, we got backlinks and this kind of stuff from it. But more importantly, it's about just getting on the radar. So obviously, this wasn't like, since this was broad tier 1 media, it wasn't exactly targeted traffic or whatever, but these things kind of snowball, right? Then somebody learns about it, then they tell their guy. And so, yeah, it definitely was something that moved the needle a little bit, especially the CNBC piece. So they did the article and there's also like an accompanying video and they like sent out the full professional team to like basically video a day in the life. And it went super viral in Thailand as well. And it was really interesting watching There's like 3 different responses. There's the Thai response, there's the Farang expats who live in Thailand response, and then there's the Westerner people who don't live in Thailand's response. And they were all completely all over the board. So the people who don't live here basically are just like, oh, that's insane. You could live anywhere. Why would you live there if you're spending that much money? That's like kind of the default response. And of course, any of the people that say that have never actually lived in a major city center. It's not the same, right? Like I said, the way that we live there, it costs $25,000 a month in New York. It's just not the same. But that was kind of the default gut, like, you idiot, why would you live there? And then the local expat community here, you can guess the response there, which is basically just, you idiot, why are you spending so much? I could live that way here for a fifth of that price, blah, blah, blah. He must have just got off the boat. When I first came here, I wasn't doing as good as I'm doing now. And I wasn't living on $200 a month, but I wasn't spending $8K, that's for sure. There was a lot of that kind of pushback. I ended up doing a big Twitter thread going through all these objections because, of course, in the article, some things are missed. They took some creative liberties and blah, blah, blah. So I did a big Twitter thread that kind of goes through a bunch of the details. But then the Thai response was the most interesting because I was like, did live on the local nightly news in Bangkok. They like came to my house and interviewed me. It was totally wild.
Because of CNBC.
Yeah, because this article went viral in Thailand and went like Thai bloggers. It was like the news cycle for 2 days.
Okay. And how did they respond to you?
It's interesting because Thai people, they're not covered by this branding of that Thailand is this cheap place that people can go to. Like, they know that there's wealthy people here that have nice things. But the main thing that was interesting about the response is essentially it was extremely positive. Mm-hmm. And basically everyone was like, wow, that's amazing. I hope someday that I can achieve what you've achieved. We have a great country, and if you can afford to live like that here, it's amazing. I had actually a lot of people reach out to me, Thai people, like asking for like tips on like how to get started on the internet. And then the other thing I think that kind of was, there was like a point of pride where it was like, this guy could live in New York, but he chooses to live here. We're not some junky country. We're just as good as those other tier 1 cities. And people really got behind that in the comments, which was just really interesting because they're kind of sick of seeing the video that anyone can live here for $200 a month. And so that's been the branding forever. And so then when this comes from the other side of it and they're like, yeah, see, we're like legit. You don't have to live in London. You can live here. You have all the real stuff.
I wonder if we could discuss some of the ways that you could be what I call a high-performing nomad here in Thailand.
Sure.
I run a graphic design agency. We're standing in my studio now. It's very much bricks and mortars. It's very much an old-fashioned model. It very much ties me to this city. That's not really digital nomad life, but it works well for me. I started as a freelancer and then built an agency. You, however, have a SaaS.
Correct.
Not everyone knows what a SaaS is. Please, can you spell it out for us?
You bet. So SaaS means software as a service, and it essentially means something that you would pay a monthly fee for, that the software would be hosted on the internet instead of hosted on your computer. So normally in the old days, say you would have Microsoft Word or Office, right? And then you would pay for it once and it would be on your computer, but then it wouldn't update, right? Then there'd be like a new version and you don't get it. And then you would have a couple of years, maybe you would pay again and you would download a new version and this kind of thing. And if there was bugs in the meantime, you would just deal with them for 2 years. The SaaS model is Google Docs. It's all on the internet. In their case, it's a free product, but actually the new Office suite is paid as a SaaS. And then that means that every time that there's updates, you just get them every day. So Sure. It's like the product is constantly progressing instead of the product being stagnant. And then as a consumer, you get the new thing all the time and it's always being fixed and updated. And a lot of these SaaS products would also include some sort of storage in the cloud these days. It's a little bit different a model, but you've seen it all across the board now. Canva versus the Photoshop kind of concept of paying the monthly fee, but then getting the new stuff every single minute that it comes out.
How long have SaaS businesses been around?
It's been around forever, I think, but they just snowballed as internet access got better. Some of the early SaaSes would be like a form processing SaaS. So it's like you have a website and then you put a contact form on it and then that would process and it would maybe send to your email or it would maybe store in a database somewhere. And now it's progressed to a million things are SaaS products now.
What really appeals to me about a SaaS business is something that everyone just refers to as monthly reoccurring revenue. They are sweet words.
They are very sweet words, yes. I chased them for probably about 15 years. I used to have an agency as well.
Uh-huh.
I had a development agency and we built websites for people. I had a small team, but they were all remote. So I didn't have an office. And I obtained the clients from the city that I used to live in the States. And then I just trained them that I'm never going to have face-to-face meetings with you anymore, but I'm still going to deliver the work. And then I started living around the world. But the point here is that when I had first moved to Panama is when I had met a couple people that were running SaaS products. And I was like, oh, this is scaling a lot different than the agency is scaling. Every time I want to double my income, I have to double my seat count and I have to double my sales count. And when you go up 2x, it's twice as hard. Everything's twice as much. Like it's very hard to scale an agency, especially to really big numbers, and do it without killing yourself. I had two close friends in when I lived in Panama, one that was running a SaaS company and one that was running a very large agency. And I said, you know what? I definitely want to be the SaaS guy. So then I started trying to make products and I made many. And then it was the Dropinblog that was finally the one that took off.
So it's all about subscriptions, right?
Right.
And I have quite a number of subscriptions and I go through them and try and cull them because they're easy to sign up for and then they're easy to forget about and they just keep running. And that's what really appeals to me about being a high-performing digital nomad with a SaaS company where you can just sign up more and more clients and focus on building and scaling your business.
Beauty of the SaaS as a business is that when I add a new feature, that value is added to everyone. So it's like the same amount of work for me to add a feature if I have 10 customers or if I have 1,000. In the early years, it's very tough because you're building this product for no one or very few people. And then as you scale, though, then it's the same product. And so then eventually that starts to compound. The revenue continues to compound. Obviously, there's more complications as you get bigger, of course, but it's nothing like the agency. It's not a one-to-one kind of a thing. Like once you start going upstream, there's a lot more scalability that's a little bit easier. And yes, in theory, it's just printing money every month and you don't, quote, have to do anything. But the goal is always to continue to create something that people actually get value from, hopefully tons of value, so that the amount that they're spending with you is nothing compared to the value that they're receiving. You're not going to quit Spotify or Apple Music if you love music, right? Like the amount of value that you're getting for $10 a month or whatever it is just like unbelievable because you get to listen to all this music that you love forever. That's going to be pretty far down the list to go.
You picked a great example. I have a Spotify subscription. I use it every day. It's a family plan, but everyone in my family uses it. Tremendous value for money. Definitely not canceling that one.
Right.
YouTube Premium. I also, for my business, I have a Dropbox. For my LinkedIn outreach, I have all these automation tools. I have a collection of subscriptions. Which ones do you have? Or which ones are your favorites and which ones give you most value?
It's interesting too to talk about you kind of have these personal side ones and then you have the business side ones. Anything that's personal, which we call B2C, which is business to consumer, versus B2B, which is business to business, you definitely do not want to start a B2C. Don't do that. You want to come up with something to sell to businesses because businesses have problems. We're talking about the joy of listening to music. That's not a need. If you look at now, these days, everyone has 25 video subscriptions. So you've got Netflix and you've got Disney Plus and you've got Hulu and blah, 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 blah. Those are cancelable, right? And harder to get to. Where if I solve some business problem in your agency for $10, $20, $50, $300 a month, whatever. If I solve something for $300 a month that was costing you $2,000 a month in headache, you're never going to cancel that, right?
And to be a SaaS founder, do you need to be a coder? Are you a coder?
I am a coder, but I'm more of the front-end coder. So that means the interface. I can do a little bit of back-end coder, but I have two co-founders, and one of them is the one who does the heavy lifting on the back-end coding. So it's not required. I know a lot of non-technical SaaS founders, but it's definitely harder. Knowing how to code is helpful because especially in those early days, if you don't have a lot of runway from some other business or something, you're going to need to code out a product and it's going to be a lot of work. And if you have to hire someone for that, it's going to be probably expensive if you want it done well. There are ways to do that these days with some no-code tools. Like there's a product called Bubble that allows you to build SaaS-like products just with a drag-and-drop style editor. I wouldn't build my whole business on that, but I wouldn't be opposed to starting it like that. And then once I tested the product and got a few customers and thought, oh, this concept works, then I would have validated it and then maybe hire in a coder if I wasn't. But knowing how to code in any level is always great and useful and fun.
Fun, really?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I'm more of a front-end kind of guy.
Front-end to me means means that you're working on the user interface, the user experience,
Correct.
rather than the back end, which is the processing of that data, that information, or those systems.
Yeah. Just to give a quick example. So right now, one of the things that we're working to roll out on our product, as you mentioned briefly, is a blogging product. So it basically allows you to put a blog on your website. And one of the things that we're working to roll out is this click to listen to the article. So you may have seen this like on Forbes. Only the big guys have it. It's not really something you see on smaller blogs these days, but it's basically like there's an article there and you can just hit play and it listens like a podcast. And so we're going to be rolling that out for our users. And so when we started building that, the back end is how do we use AI to convert the text into voice so it sounds natural, and then creating a file for that and whatever. But so that's the back end. The front end is the interface, right? It's what does the play button look like? What does the loading look like? What does the scrubbing thing look like? Can you speed it up and slow it down? What does the buttons for that look like? How does that feel? Does it work right on mobile? All of this kind of stuff. That was something that I personally built, was the interface for the player for that in this example.
And with your SaaS Dropinblog, where did the inspiration come from that? Were you solving your own problem?
Definitely. As I mentioned, we had the development agency and we used to do a lot of websites just like hand coded. And this was before WordPress became the kind of default. And so we were building a bunch of static sites for people, and we had built an internal CMS for them. Eventually, these people wanted to do content marketing, writing blog posts that are going to rank in Google and drive you some business. They wanted to add a blog to their existing site. The solution was you put WordPress on a subdomain, and now we're back to where we started, which is why they didn't want to have WordPress in the first place. And now you have to run WordPress and your website, and now you need a theme for WordPress to match your other site, and you're running two things, and now you got all the problems of WordPress again. So we were like, what if there was a blog that you could just drop into the existing site? We actually had this idea for a long time, and then we finally coded it out in 2015, and then we just started using it for our own customers. It wasn't really making a lot of money. And then we had started a few other SaaS products as well and trying to figure out how to get out of the agency. And then it was around 2019 that Dropinblog started taking off, specifically because of these no-code builders. So we thought it was going to be for people that had made custom websites, which is what we were trying to solve it for. But then we saw this rise in things like Shopify and Teachable and Thinkific and Kartra and Webflow and all these do-it-yourself drag and drop things. And most of them either didn't have a blog platform at all, or it was crappy. And we started seeing signups from these guys. And then we thought, oh, wait, bing, there's a market. Now all of those audiences are target market. So then we started building official integrations with a bunch of them. And then now we've integrated with like 25 different builder platforms. And that gave us a bit more of a product market fit. That's when we saw the light bulb moment. And then we sold our other projects, unbundled the agency, and went all in 2019.
Awesome. So how many customers does Dropinblog have?
A few thousand.
And how do you get new customers?
Mostly through SEO. We actually use our own product, have a blog, create articles, and drive traffic from Google for people looking for terms related to adding a blog to their website. That's where most of our customers come from.
You have quite a lean team, don't you? Is there 3 or 4 of you?
We have 3 co-founders, and then we do have a team of about 10 under that. I like to hire people hourly, so then I can get really laser-focused skill sets. I'd rather hire 3 people that are really good at the one thing that they're good at and then pay them by the hour.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jesse, that's been a fascinating insight into your business and into SaaS. I appreciate that, because one thing that is unique about you is that you're pretty open about money. Can we talk about money?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I would like to ask you, how do you like to spend money? Like, what gives you the best satisfaction when you're spending money?
For me, it's probably aesthetic, as in starting with like apartment. I like just being in a nice space. It just makes me feel good all the time. I probably tend to overspend on apartment, car, transfer, because I just feel like being in a nice space puts me in a mental space that feels good all the time. That's where I'm definitely spending more than a normal person would in their balance sheet.
And from home quite a bit, I guess. I know you do get out and about and you use co-working centers, but when you're working from home, it's important to invest in that, right?
Yeah, and I do work at home the majority of the time. While a lot of people working in co-working spaces and coffee shops, and you see this kind of in the marketing of digital nomading. If you look at the stats, Peter Levels, who's someone in the Nomad space, Levels.io on Twitter, he did a survey of where do nomads work. And the majority of them do actually work at home because you can set up a better space, basically. I definitely do work out occasionally, but it's almost for a change of pace. It adds to creating a nice aesthetic at home and a nice space and this kind of stuff.
So I'm guessing you can combine your home budget and your office budget and get somewhere great.
Yeah, that's part of it.
So where would you choose to live in Chiang Mai when you're here?
Chiang Mai is a tough one, especially short term. We like the being right in everything. Everywhere that we stay, we like to stay all the way in the center of the universe. And that's usually comes at a massive premium. But we love that being able to just walk out your door and like everything's right there. And so that's the goal for us. And then what else is getting rid of as much personal admin as possible. Everyone just loves to waste tons of time on that. And when you're not living in the West, there's endless services that can pull these things out of your life. I'm talking about laundry, cleaning your house, delivery of stuff. There's just endless services that you can just get everything handled for you, but no problem. So here in Chiang Mai, there's a great laundry delivery service. They deliver in 2 days and it's very cheap and very high quality and definitely never doing laundry.
You just mentioned that there's an awesome laundry service. For me, I see laundry services everywhere. Is there one in particular?
Yeah, I use WashDrop.
WashDrop.
Yeah.
Okay. Little shout out to WashDrop for the people of Chiang Mai. If you're not using it, have a look at it.
Yeah. The founder's a foreigner who I think used to be a digital nomad as well and kind of saw the opportunity of building an app around all these great laundry concept that was already here. And so then it saves everyone that step of walking down the street and going finding a shop that you trust. They've expanded over the last few years and they now have presence in Bangkok. And I think that they're rolling out in Phuket too. Great service. I've been using them for 5 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into that. So we're going to stay on money. We've talked a little bit about how to make it and what you enjoy about it. Do you also invest it?
Sometimes. In this particular chapter in my life, I'm spending a lot more trying to invest in the business because we've got to this point where we've found this market fit, as I was explaining. I think that it's smart to lean into that. So we've been pushing more back into the business to try to get to the big numbers and maybe an exit someday is kind of the thought process. As far as investing, I think people overcomplicate it. If you're looking for a long-term investment, S&P, like Vanguard, low cost, like that method, do it yourself and just put it in there because it seems to beat everything else. And then I do think that there's something to be said for Bitcoin and crypto. I think that there's something there that could still turn out to be something really important. I tend to keep a few chips in that direction as well.
A few chips. I won't put numbers on that. When did you get into Bitcoin?
The first time that I discovered it was around...
If you don't remember the year, you probably remember the price.
Yeah, it was like $15.
Oh, get out of here.
But I didn't buy any. I remember like seeing an article about it and talking to my business partner and being like, yo, should we throw $5,000 into this? Just like seems interesting. And we didn't. But then the bull run in 2017, I started to get into understanding it a bit more. And I just find it really fascinating. And at the end of the day, like the tech is really good and really interesting. And I think that once the world figures out how it's going to deal with it, there's going to be a lot of special things to offer. All these things take time to work out.
So I have a couple more questions relating to money. I asked my dad this question and got a really insightful answer from him that we still talk about. So I'm going to try it on you.
All right.
What's the thing that you've indulged in the most by spending a large amount of money on one thing?
Oh, that's a good one. A lot of times with my business partners or with just a couple of friends that also have location independent businesses, we'll rent like a really fancy villa for like co-living, co-working month. Maybe that's in South Thailand or Bali or who knows where. Those can be pretty expensive, especially when they come well appointed. But man, it's cool.
Yeah.
Being a nomad, you don't really need a car, especially because I love to live in city centers. So you just take Grab or Uber all the time or whatever. And there's no point in having a car, basically. So coming from the States, the car culture is something that I grew up with and that I do enjoy. And I do like cars a lot, but I don't have access to them. So that's actually when I do go back to the States, which isn't that often, we'll go back like a month here and there and spend a month in California or New York. A lot of times when we go back, I'll use that as my excuse to get a fun car. And now that they have Turo is like a peer-to-peer car rental app.
Oh, I like that.
It's cool because you can get anything you want. A couple of years ago, my wife Janine, she hadn't been done like the full California thing. So we went to California for like a month and drove up the famous Coastal Highway 1 and spent some time in Bay Area and a bunch of time in LA. And then we rented like a Boxster convertible for that ride. I would probably never buy a Boxster, but being able to rent one for a month is huge indulgence and like awesome. Yeah, then another time when we went to visit my family, I got a Tesla for a few weeks, and that was the first time that I was able to drive a Tesla. And amazing, by the way, if you've never driven a Tesla.
I haven't.
They're the best thing ever.
Really? Why?
They're so fast. It's just unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, they just kill everything else. You feel the G-force when you come off of the stop sign. They're unbelievable. Yeah.
Wow.
And also the tech in the inside of the car, they have this gigantic screen and everything's on the screen. And it feels like a big iPhone or whatever. But it's just hilarious because you get into that and then you get into any other car and you're just like, everyone's screwed. It's just so far ahead. And it's funny because the tech, it's not that different. But for some reason, you get into cars and they still have all these old buttons and knobs, and our whole rest of our life is a touchscreen. But somehow that didn't get to the car yet. But in the Tesla, it did, and they did a very nice job. So
yeah, okay. So biggest indulgences fitting in with your lifestyle, really. The beautiful accommodation, and then when you go home, you like to rent a good car.
Yeah.
So let's leave the money one there, and I've got some quick fire questions for you, and you probably heard the first one there. What's your favorite restaurant in Chiang Mai?
There's a ramen spot on the middle street in Niman on the south side of it. I can't think of the name. That's my favorite restaurant right now.
Yeah. And you actually said that you liked Duke's already.
Definitely like Duke's, yeah.
Some sushi?
There's a new one on that street on Niman that's between 2 and 4. It's the word for happiness in Thai. I don't know. Anyways, there's a little new sushi spot there that's very good.
Okay. Italian?
Why Not is a standby. Always very solid. But I've had a couple other ones that were pretty good too.
Cool. I've got to say, you were the first and only guest to actually turn up with coffee today. So you brought coffee into the studio for me, which went down incredibly. What's your favorite coffee shop?
Voyage. You can look it up. It's got a nice view too. Also here in Niman. You might be sensing a theme.
Definitely picking up. There's a few favorite spots. Okay. Next question. Where's your favorite place to just take a walk in nature in Chiang Mai?
There's a little reservoir, the one that's kind of by the university here, slightly west of Niman.
Is that Hoi Gao Waterfalls?
No.
Near up by the zoo?
It's near that, but it's not that. Yeah.
Okay.
You can find it on the map.
I will. After work, what's your favorite activity in Chiang Mai?
Probably meet up with some friends, grab some food, grab a cocktail. That's a nice thing that's progressed here in Chiang Mai the last few years.
Cool. Can I give you some random quickfire? What's your favorite nickname?
I don't know if I have nicknames.
What's your wife call you?
Amor.
Mm.
Love.
When you were young, did you have a nickname at school?
I used to go by Jess instead of Jesse. Big divergence here.
Wow. Massive change. Describe your style in one word.
Sleek.
Sleek Jess. Love that. Who's your best friend?
I feel like I got a lot of good people in my life. I don't think I could narrow it down to just one.
I thought you were going to say Janine. Is that fair to say?
Obviously, Janine's one of my best friends.
Yeah. Are you still friends with schoolmates?
I have a few of those. Actually, a couple of them made it out to the wedding that I hadn't seen in quite a while. And then there's one in New York that I keep in touch with.
Let's talk about mentors, because I asked you about friends, but also mentors. Do you have a mentor?
Probably a few people from the DC, some few people from different chapters in my life. I tend to keep in touch with a lot of people that I've met around the world, and a lot of people have different life experiences, right? So I feel like, one person can maybe help me a lot with business. One person can maybe help me a lot with personal stuff, or that's how I like to do it.
Okay. Couple more. What's the kindest thing you've ever done for someone else?
I do like to try to help people out with the resources I have. Pretty regularly, I try to connect people that I think could benefit from each other. There's a lot of scenarios where 1 + 1 = 3. And if you don't know those connections, then that doesn't happen. And not that I'm the most connected person in the world, but I do come across a lot of people that have interesting things to offer in their life. And when you can put those together and see something cool happen, whether it be business or personal or whatever, that's pretty cool. And I feel like I do that pretty regularly.
You seem to be very well balanced. You always seem to be quite chipper and in a good mood. Is there anything that you see in your life or in other people's lives that makes you sad?
Life admin number 1.
Life admin.
Yeah.
Okay, but you've managed to get rid of that.
Yeah, usually, but it's still depressing when you have to get on the call with the airline for an hour and a half to solve something and they can only be you and blah, 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 blah. That's soul crushing.
Yeah.
Really bad traffic can make me sad.
But you love Bangkok.
Yeah, but I live in the center of the center and try to live on the BTS, so I try to avoid traffic like the plague.
Uh-huh.
The other thing that can make me sad is seeing people in the world that are closed-minded. Something that happens when you travel is you naturally meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and you learn a lot about the human experience. People that haven't left the 10-mile radius where they were born, since you haven't encountered a bunch of other people with a bunch of other mindsets, it's hard to understand where they're coming from. And so it's sad when you see these people essentially usually fighting on the internet, or if you have a dinner with them and they have all these very closed-minded views, is usually because they haven't really spent a lot of time with other people or those people that they're talking about. And yeah, not the happiest thing to see that, and not the easiest thing to solve either.
Yeah, very true. And then the flip side of that, what is it that brightens up your day on a daily basis? What is it that keeps you ticking along nice and happy?
being connected to friends and people around the world, access that we have to new ideas and what's going on. And I think it's something that keeps me excited. What's going on with AI right now, or what's happening with different changes in the world and experiments that people are doing. And I think that's really interesting. And because of where we're at with the internet, I think that's the exciting side of what can be a dark social media experience that a lot of people have. And I think that there is a positive space out there and there's a lot of good things happening. We're fortunate to have access to that. People are more educated than they were before, and they have learned about things that they wouldn't have learned about before. And that's pretty cool.
Thank you, Jesse. This has been a great chat. I've enjoyed it a great deal. We're lucky enough, I think, fortunate enough to be part of a very positive community that we call the DC, but that extends further than that. It's about people who do have a growth mindset and do want to help and share their knowledge, their information, and help others. And you've done that for me. About a year and a half ago, we were in a mastermind together, and I greatly appreciated the wisdom and the time that you took to help me with my business. So, public thank you for that.
My pleasure. I always love brainstorming on other people's businesses because then I don't have to do the work.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds great. Yeah, just a final one. Thank you so much, Jesse. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I'm on most of the socials, so whatever you're into. My name is Jesse Schoberg. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, that kind of stuff. Or I blog a little bit on my personal site at schoberg.net. Or if you're in the business of adding a blog to your company, you can check out dropinblog.com.
Super. Jesse, been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, man.
That was CNX Podcast.